In the ongoing fight against Alzheimer's disease, scientists are always looking for new avenues, new clues. And today, we're talking about a discovery that comes from a place that, well, most of us would probably never expect.
It's a pretty bold question, right? But it's right at the heart of a brand new study that we're going to break down today. But look, before we dive in, there's a really crucial distinction we have to make about the specific compound we're talking about. Okay, let's be super clear. We are talking about CBD, that's cannabidiol, not THC. CBD is the non-psychoactive compound. It doesn't produce a high. THC, the compound that does, is not part of this research at all. That's a key thing to remember.
So, what exactly is CBD anyway? Well, it's just one of over 100 different compounds you can find in the cannabis plant. And what's interesting is that previous studies have already hinted that it might have some anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. And that's exactly why scientists are starting to get really curious about its potential effects on the brain.
And that brings us to this brand new study, published in the journal eNeuro. Researchers started to explore this, really surprising link between CBD and Alzheimer's. They used a mouse model to see if this compound could actually tackle one of the disease's biggest problems, neuroinflammation.
So how in the world might this actually work? Let's unpack what the research found and see what the scientists really discovered. The process they used was actually pretty straightforward. The team took mice that were specifically bred to have an Alzheimer's-like condition. Then they administered CBD through inhalation, and finally they measured the levels of inflammation in their brains. Simple as that.
And the results? Well, they were pretty significant. The study found that the inhaled CBD actually reduced the production of these key molecules that, basically regulate inflammation in the brain. To put it simply, it really looked like it was calming that storm of inflammation that we see with Alzheimer's.
So let's get into the mechanics of it. According to the lead researcher, Dr. Babak Baban, the brain's immune system in Alzheimer's patients is kind of stuck on high alert. You can think of it like an overactive security system where all these alarm pathways are just constantly firing. What CBD appears to do is turn down the volume on that system. It calms these specific alarm pathways, it lowers the pro-inflammatory molecules, and it helps bring things back to a healthier, more balanced state.
Now this is a really big deal because it pushes the conversation way beyond the traditional theories of what actually causes Alzheimer's. So let's see how this builds on what we thought we knew about the disease.
For decades, literally decades, the fight against Alzheimer's has been laser-focused on clearing two main things from the brain: amyloid plaques and tau tangles. But a new way of thinking is starting to take hold. While those plaques might be the initial spark, a lot of scientists now believe the real damage, the thing that actually kills brain cells, is the chronic, raging fire of inflammation that comes after.
And this just shows you what a major shift in thinking this is. The study's lead author, Dr. Babin, puts it perfectly. He says we now know Alzheimer's isn't driven by just one thing. It's a super complex disease with a ton of factors, and chronic inflammation is looking like a huge piece of that puzzle.
So as you can imagine, a finding like this has really stirred up a debate among experts. Let's start by looking at the more hopeful, optimistic perspective.
Dr. Megan Glenn, a clinical neuropsychologist who wasn't involved in this particular study, said the results were really compelling. For her, the key wasn't just that CBD seemed to reduce inflammation. It was that this action was tied to a clear functional outcome. The mice actually showed better memory and less anxiety.
And her takeaway gets right to the heart of this new direction in Alzheimer's research. She says amyloid is not the whole story. She sees patients who have brains full of amyloid plaques but are still cognitively sharp. And that suggests we absolutely have to be looking at other drivers, like inflammation.
But of course, not everyone is convinced. For a balanced view, we also have to listen to the dose of skepticism that's coming from other parts of the medical community.
Dr. Clifford Siegel, a neurologist, is quick to point out that as of right now, the idea that CBD is a proven therapy for any neurological condition is, frankly, still highly controversial.
His position on this is really firm. He says that, based on the evidence we have today, any suggestion that using CBD in humans could improve Alzheimer's symptoms is just challenging to agree with.
And his caution comes from a few key places. He points out that some studies have actually linked CBD use to cognitive issues, not improvements. He says he would not recommend it to his older patients. And he suggests that maybe CBD research would be better off focusing on things like arthritis, where that anti-inflammatory link is a bit more established.
So with this debate raging on,
Hope on one side, skepticism on the other. Where does the research possibly go from here? Well, the next step is the most crucial, and honestly, the most challenging one, moving from mice to people. And that's exactly what the team is planning to do. They're getting ready for what are called translational studies. But we have to remember, the jump from a mouse model to a human subject is a massive, massive hurdle in medical research. It's where a lot of promising findings, sadly, end up falling short.
So these human trials are going to have some very specific, very careful goals. First and foremost, they have to confirm that inhaled CBD is even safe for this group of patients. Then they have to figure out the right dosing, which is way more complex in people than in mice. And maybe most importantly, they have to verify that it actually affects the same immune pathways in a human brain.
So all of this brings us back to one final, really provocative thought. Is Alzheimer's, at its very core, an inflammatory disease? This one mouse study is just a single clue. It is not a definitive answer, but it definitely points towards a radical new way of thinking about this devastating disease, and maybe, just maybe, a groundbreaking new front in the fight.